the epicenter of the power of Paro, and we will destroy it from within. And I think tonight, if I may say, I'm sure part of the greatness of Rabbi Wolf is that he takes us on a journey. He takes us on a journey where it might be surprising, and we'll learn about different concepts, different ideas that we might have heard about. So he's gonna say, boy, boy, come with me onto a journey, onto an inspiring journey to hear some wonderful insight and words and inspiration. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our dear friend, Rabbi Reuven Wolf, and I'm going to ask him to unmute. Now, here comes the technology. Oh, fantastic. He has unmuted. And in fact, I think I'm going to actually make him into the co-host at this point, so that if necessary, he also, towards the end of the discussion, if people want to submit any questions, they can type in to the chat any questions they may have. And at the end of Rabbi Wolf's presentation, he will hopefully give some time to those questions, which he will answer, hopefully. So now I'm just trying to see if we can find him so we can hand him over. But I can't. No. Okay, but I know, there I see you. Oh, here we go. Make co-host. Yes, here we go. Yes. Rabbi Wolf, you are now officially a co-host, and you can now, and we can, is it recording? Are we recording? Yes, we are recording. Okay. Rabbi Reuven Wolf.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, when was it that you were at our show?
You don't remember? I was there. I was there a few years ago when I met my dear Rebbitzin, Esther Mindel, who you know, of course. And she's shy; she doesn't want to be shown. But I came into your shul when it must be about 7-8 years ago, and I even spoke a little bit. Baruch Hashem,
oh wow, nice!
We had a nice farbrengen there, and it was a fantastic.
I remember the Englishman. I do remember an Englishman speaking.
That's me. That's the Englishman.
Good. It was you. I had two Englishmen speak. It was you once, and I also had Rabbi Safran.
Oh.
By us one time.
Oh.
Yeah.
We have his son here. His son is on tonight, Reb Mendel Safran.
Ah, great. That's very special.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for having me on, and I hope I come across clearly on the on the sound. May Hashem help that we should have what we call a smooth connection, without any static. Okay. So I wasn't going to say this, but being that you mentioned Boyel Paro coming to Paroi, it's one of the most puzzling things that we find. Who is Paroi? Who is Paroi that Moshe Rabbeinu was told to come to Paroi? And why was he so afraid now? I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu went to Paroi already 7 times. Because in the last parsha, Parshas Ve'era, Moshe Rabbeinu had already administrated 7 makkos, 7 plagues. Suddenly Moshe Rabbeinu was terrified. And as you mentioned, Boyel Paroi means, come with me, because Moshe was scared. So the Zohar says, because until this point, Moshe Rabbeinu went to meet Paroi basically outside of his palace. Or maybe even when he met him inside the palace, he didn't meet him inside, the inner chamber. He would meet him at various different, in different appearances and so on and so forth. And that was not so intimidating. That was not so dark. And Moshe Rabbeinu kind of felt empowered. And he wasn't so threatened. This time the Eibishter said, the Zohar says, Hashem said, I'm going to take you in Idrin Lifnime Idrin. I'm going to take you into the inner. You are going to face the core essence of evil and darkness. You know that Golus Mitzrayim was the root of all the other Goliaths. Imagine, and Paro is the source of the dictator that's going to be the root of all future exiles. So imagine a human being who has within him all the Nebuchadnezzar and Titus and Stalin and Hitler Yamach Shemoy and all the ferocious monsters and all these beings are all wrapped up in their nucleus and their source. This is something that's very, very, very intimidating and very and afraid. And if not for the Eibishter saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, "Come, I'm going to hold your hand and we're going to go in together," Moshe was scared. Yet the same Zohar that tells us this teaching also teaches us that Paroi is the highest level of holiness. In Kedusha, there's a certain level called a level that is such intense light, a place where all godly light emanates from, and that's Paroi. And when it says Boyal Paroi, Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, let us go into the deepest, innermost core of Kedusha. In Hasidic terminology or Kabbalistic terminology, we know there is various different attributes, various different revelations, and then there is the crown of Hashem, Hashem's unfiltered self. And in the crown, there is the inside of the crown, the inner core of the crown. And that is called, mysteriously, it's called Paroi. And when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, come in, let's go into the deepest inner core of holiness. And from that place is where Geula is going to come. That's where you're going to activate Geula. Like we know what happened of the night, Parshas Boi, Vayihi Bachzi Alayla, and it was the middle of the night. And Vashem Hikakol B'chor, and what do we say in the Agada? Ani v'loi malach, I am not an angel. Ani v'loi hashliach, I am not an emissary, not an agent. Ani hu v'loi acher, I am and no one else. Whereas the pasuk says, Nigla aleim, and revealed himself upon them. Melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu b'chvoidoi u'ba'atzmoi. It doesn't say just the king. The kings of kings, b'chvoidoi ba'atzmoi. In Kabbalistic literature and Hasidus, it describes that these are all levels within the divine. But melech b'chvoidoi ba'atzmoi means the very essence of God Himself, not any manifestation, not any limited projection of Hashem, but Hashem in His very, very core. And guess what? That's the Paroi of Kedusha. Now Moshe Rabbeinu was told to enter from where he can bring down the powerful revelation of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So obviously the question becomes, make up your mind. We're asking the Zohar the question, which one is it? Is Paro the most evil monster in the world, the darkest being of beings? Or is Paroi the root of holiness at its very, very core? And the answer is, both are true. And we're dealing with a double reality. We're dealing with an external shell, and then there is the internal, something that's hiding behind the shell. When we are facing and steering down the essence of evil, when we are confronted with unimaginable darkness that seems to have gripped the world without any exit route, when it seems like there's nowhere to run and nowhere to hide, where there is such crippling darkness, it is very important to know that really underneath it all is really the power of the highest and the innermost point of godliness and of holiness. And here's the thing. It all depends on which glasses we're wearing and which way we're looking at the situation. We can get caught up and get lost in the monster Paro, or we can pull away and lift the veil and see the Paroi de Kedusha, the inner core of Keser, of Hashem's inner being. It's no soid. It's not a secret that in the last year, the world has been undergoing some intense, very, very, very intense stuff that is, in a way, extremely frightening. There's no one that's going to say that the last year was a picnic. For and foremost, we've been under this plague, and a plague that has wreaked havoc on the world at large. And but also has devastated the Jewish communities. A lot of people. We've lost a lot of relatives. I don't think there's one person amongst us that doesn't have friends, acquaintances, people that they've known. And some shuls, the entire, at least in New York and in other places, the entire Mizrach Wand, as you would say, the Eastern Wall, Allah, where you say the Sheina Yidden, all the people of a certain age, all the people of a certain age, wiped out. It's frightening. But it's not just those who passed away. It's the way life has become for all of us. That the isolation, the lockdowns, the separations, the fears, the intimidation, the human face has changed. Think about that. Who would have ever imagined that a day will come that when you will walk on the street and you will look at human beings, you will see a new face. You will see a face covered. Amish, literally, faces covered. And it's not in one community. It's not in one place. Literally, for the entire globe. You're watching an economy that's shaking, quaking and shaking. You're watching an entire community's entire lockdowns. Okay, Baruch Hashem, things got better in the sense, I'm not exactly sure where things are at England right now, and I know it was pretty bad. But I do know that at least, for the most of the world, we had a couple of months where every school was in lockdown. Shuls were not taking place. We couldn't daven. We couldn't learn normally. We couldn't do all these things. And even the Kaisel Hamaravi was desolated. Pesach Seders, I don't have to tell you, people that sitting, are you so accustomed to be with family members, with love, sitting alone without a person to turn to, the loneliness, the darkness, the sadness, the fear, the insecurity. We can go on, and that was only Corona. If it would only be Corona, we would say Dayenu. When it comes to the year 2020, we can create a whole Dayenu. We say, if it would only happen this, if that would have been bad enough. And if then we also had this, over here in the United States, you all know the political turmoil, what we've seen this year. And the riots, cities being torn down. I took a tour the day after Shavuos. I went out with my son. This is the next day. Shavuos was Shabbos, was Matzah Shabbos in the morning. The night before, we all got a warning: everybody stay home, don't go out. We looked at our windows, and I actually saw, we were making the Ilas Achag, we were having a Fabreng, and I couldn't go. Shul was canceled because it was too dangerous to go, because there was a Black Lives Matter protest not too far from my house. But when we looked out in the window, we saw actually people running with, one guy was running with furniture, another person was running with like a ton of sweaters and clothing. And you see clearly these are people that are looting. They're running down the streets. Our streets, our grocery stores were robbed, were looted, were broken. And I literally took a drive the next day, and you would think you were literally driving through a war zone, down Fairfax Avenue, down Melrose, down Beverly, everything bottled up, things broken, strewn around. People are there trying to remove the graffiti and trying to fix the broken glass, sweeping. It's crazy. And who else do we see? We saw not tanks, but army trucks. I mean, who would have believed in the middle of the street to see things like this? And we know the United States was burning for a couple of months. All this leading up to a craziest election that we've seen now. The country literally feels, you can feel the tension. It feels like at any minute a match can be lit, chas v'shalom, and a civil war can break out. Hashem should protect and watch, and so on and so forth. But what we've seen, and calls for defunding the police, and calls, and in a sense, sometimes things that sound so ridiculous. And after, especially if it comes after a period of time in which we've seen certain things in the world that seem to be so positive and so fortunate for the Jewish people. We've watched Yerushalayim been declared as the capital. That is huge. We've watched the Golan Heights been announced as part of Eretz Yisrael, something that has been contested for all this time. We've watched the enemies of the Jewish people literally being taken to the brink and suffocating, literally. The suffocation, the kicking out of the PA, of the Palestinians from Washington, shutting down their embassies, literally cutting down their funding, defunding UNRWA. I mean, things that were happening, and especially when it comes to Iran. We've watched the stepping out of that horrific Iranian deal. We've watched the general that was a threat, the biggest threat to world peace, the general that was threatening literally the lives of millions of Jews being taken out suddenly when they killed Soleimani. We watched these events happening, pow, 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 one after another. And how much more so do I have to tell you, the greatest, completely inexplicable event that happened this year, just a few months ago, in which we've seen 6 countries, and many of them are places where you have millions and maybe hundreds of millions of people out of nowhere suddenly turned around in recognition of Eretz Yisrael, of Israel, and wanting to make peace and wanting to live in peace and in harmony and a friendship with the Jewish people. That is just unheard of. That is unbelievable, especially that it happened in such a short period of time. And we're talking about people that for hundreds of years bore a deep, deep hatred. And our cousins, the Bnei Yishmael, and suddenly there's such a change of heart. And when you look, you can see it's sincere, it's real, it's genuine. They really want to feel connected. Now, of course, there is an economic boost, but the very fact that they see us as the future, that they see us as something that can give them both security and prosperity is an enormous miracle. So we've seen all of that happening, and yet we're watching now a threatening moment that seems to take all of this and roll it completely into the other direction. I have to say that many people are scared and many people are deathly afraid. And the mood in the streets all over is of real fear and what's happening. Is there chas v'shalom a klipa takeover? Is the world rolling into the deepest dungeons of darkness again? People are afraid, and legitimately so. There is stuff that are happening and there is a whole question: is this a fair election? Was it not a fair election? Is it just the president's imagination that he won the election, or is it true? Millions of people believe he is saying the truth. He's not saying the truth. All this is going on, and all this chaos and all this madness. Obviously, we all understand, and everybody will say, I think most people will understand and say, come on, there's gotta be Mashiach's Zeit. No question. It's gotta be Mashiach's Zeit. However, and I don't even want to discuss the thought that, no, maybe it's not Mashiach's Zeit. Maybe we're still living through a very dark gullus, and who knows. That's not my discussion today. We can have a different discussion. I'm talking about, yes, we all agree it's Mashiach's Zeit, for sure. But even within Mashiach's Zeit, there's 2 ways to approach this period of time that we're in right now. We can see this time as Kates Hayamin, or we can see this time as Kates Hayamin. And what do I mean by that? We're living through a very, very, very confusing period. I would call it Bein Hashmashos. Bein Hashmashos is a period that's not day and not night. It's Safik Yom, Safik Laila. So you don't really, meaning it's a doubt, it's a time period, it's called twilight. In Shabbos, you don't know. Is it Shabbos already? Is it still Friday? What is it? Is it the end of the week, or is it already the beginning of Shabbos? So the halacha is we have to treat it like it's the beginning of Shabbos, but yet we can still have certain leniencies during this time and do certain things that are still weekday, not ourselves, but we can ask a guy, certain things that we wouldn't do, but Bein Hashmashos, it's permitted because no. You can, depends how you want to see it. That's the idea. It's a mixture, and it's a very confusing time because you're seeing things that are both night and day. It's already Shabbos, but it's weekday. So if you're looking, for example, let's look at the events that are going on. There are certain indications of what happened in the last year that is so marvelous, it's so miraculous, it is so godly, and it's so good. And there are certain things that we're looking at which seems to be so dark and such that make us really, really question, where are we? So here's the idea. Again, this is my take on everything. Everybody's, of course, I don't tell anybody Kabbalah Daiti. Everybody has their minds of their own. You can learn your own. Everybody can learn on their own. Learn. The main thing, inspiration, we need to take from Torah. Inspiration needs to come from the Eibishter, from Hashem. And Hashem gives us his message through Torah. And in Torah itself, there is the halacha and the more outer part of Torah. And then when you sometimes to understand and appreciate what's going on, it helps when we study the more esoteric ideas, so we know the underlying elements about what is going on from a much deeper place. So the Zohar says regarding the word kates. And it's Nageya, for instance, in Parshas Miketz. It says, Vayhi Miketz Shenasayim Yomim. So the Zohar brings on the word kates. So the question is, what is the kates that we're talking about? What kind of kates is it? So the Zohar says that there is two kitsim. There is a kates called kates hayomim, and there is a kate with yomim meaning the end of days, and there is a kates called kates hayomin, the end of the right side. Where does the word kates hayomin come from? In the end of Sefer Daniel, the last words, the Hashem tells Daniel, go to sleep, meaning you're going to pass away, and then you're going to be resurrected again. You're going to be awakened again, and v'samoy, then you're going to get up. L'kates hayomin, to the end. He doesn't say yomim, he says yomin with a nun. Now Mefarshim in the Chumash say that kates hayomin is the same idea like kates hayomim, same idea. It means the end of days, the end time. But like what we call acharis hayomim, the end of days. But Zohar says, no, there's two kitzim. There is a kates that's the end of darkness, and that's called kates hayomim. That kates is a kates of extreme darkness. It's a force that brings, it's a force of death. It's a force it's also called, the Zohar refers to it as kates kol basar, the end of all flesh. And as it is explained by the Kabbalists, it means that when the powers of darkness are reaching their last and final seconds, when they're pashit, what we call in Hebrew and in Lashon of Talmudic study, when they're goysasik, in other words, they're in their death throes, they sometimes vera bissel zu wildevit, which means they sometimes get a little bit, because they know they're gone forever, so they can throw a temper tantrum at the last second. And that's the idea of kates kol basar. There's a lot of dark stuff happening, and it's really dark. There's no question. It's dark. It's chas v'sholom related to the opposite of life, and right. And I don't like talking about it. But then there's another kates. There's kates hayomin. Now, kates hayomin is the beginning of the right side, which means when the darkness is over and light begins, when Kedusha begins to take hold of the world and introduces Mashiach's times. That's called kates hayomin. The end of where darkness has ended. And now, in a sense, the word kates over here is not kates in terms of the end, but kates would then be the beginning. It's the kates end, which means the beginning of a time of bracha and a time of light. So there's an argument between the Arizal and the Zohar in the words Vayehi Miketz that is said in the beginning of Parshas Miketz. The which kates is it talking about? Shenasayim Yomim, those 2 years by Yosef HaTzadik. Which kates is it? Is that kates, when it says kates over there, it means a very dark period? Is it the last moments of darkness? Or is it the first moments of kedusha, of light, of goodness? So the Zohar says that kates is the last minutes of darkness. Like Ataka was in Yosef's life, those extra 2 years that Yosef was in prison was a very, very excruciatingly dark period for Yosef HaTzadik. Why? Because Yosef was supposed to be in prison only 10 years, and this prolonged him another 2 years. It was very agonizing and very, very, very frustrating for Yosef HaTzadik. At the same time, what happened during this period of 2 years? Yosef got visit, right? Right before that, what happened? The two ministers of Paro were in prison with him. Not then. This is before that, right before that. And they, in the end, were going to through them was going to come the Yeshua. The problem that Yosef had was that Yosef trusted in them. But Soif Kol Soif, the Yeshua was going to come through them. And the beginning of the Yeshua really was starting to happen already on a spiritual level. It's just that in Yosef's as it was standing right then. He didn't see it yet. At the end of the 2 years, that's when Begilui, it came out that now what? The Shar HaMashkin speaks to Paroi, and Yosef is taken out, and Yosef becomes the Melech. In other words, the good times for Yosef really started. At the very same time, it was overlapping with extreme darkness. The two kitzim were intertwined and knotted together. And the question was, what was Yosef going to live with during this dark period? Is he going to see himself as the final moments of darkness? In other words, let me put it into our question. When we look at these hardships that we're going through right now, do we see them just as darkness and as gezeros rois, as chevlei Mashiach, as intense suffering for the Jewish people and for the entire world? But we have emunah that right before the light there is darkness. But soif kol soif, this experience that we are experiencing is an experience of darkness. Or do we appreciate and do we understand that maybe all these things that seem to be happening to us, that seem to be dark, if we poke a little deeper and we get into the inner core of what's happening, it's really powerful energies of Geula that are really manifesting and rolling in. But because it's such brightness and because it's such intense light, it is still blinding us. So it's coming across to us in a manner of darkness, but that's not really what it is. And when we decodify and when we demystify, so to speak, or when we reinterpret the events and we look at them from the perspective that this is the beginning of the Geula, then we see it different. And then we actually make a difference. It becomes different because we've revealed it. Let me use another example, I think, that is going to make things much clearer. You know, this week we're reading Parshas Boy, and the Eibishter takes the Yidden out of Mitzrayim this week. So we leave Mitzrayim, and what happens? We follow Moshe Rabbeinu. All the Yidden, millions of Jews are following Moshe. Parai has been broken, mamish, crushed and broken, and now we leave Mitzrayim. But we know that next week is Parshas B'Shalach. Now, between Parshas Boy and the main event of Parshas B'Shalach, which is Kriyas Yamsuf, there is a week, and we celebrate that week every year. And what's that week? That's the week between the first Seder and Shvi Shel Pesach. Shvi Shel Pesach is when we sing Oz Yashir Moshe, when we finally sing the Shira HaGeula. The first night of Pesach, we celebrate Geula already, and then we have a whole week in between. Now, the first time we experienced that week was really a week of Bein Hashmashos. It was a week of confusion. It was already after the redemption. Parai has already been, brought to his feet. He let the Jewish people out. But after they left, what happened? Parai comes chasing after them. In other words, they saw already such light. They saw already Geula. They had already the experience of Nigla Alei Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibishter already opened up the window of Geula, and the lights and the powerful energy of redemption already came rolling into the world. It happened already. Nervous then, what then happened? Parai's chasing them. So now there's two types of Jews during that week. There are most of the Jews, which is understandably, turn around and are looking back. Because when they turn around and they see the galloping horses of Parai, the armies of Paro breathing down their neck, chasing after them, they're screaming, Gewalt, Gewalt. Yes, they know in their back of their minds, they know that Moshe Rabbeinu would not have done all of this just to have them all slaughtered in this place, but they're still scared. And they actually say that to Moshe. They say, Hamibli ain't kavarim b'Mitzrayim, l'kachtanu lamas b'midbar. Aren't there enough graves? Which means you can see they're struggling with this Parai chasing behind them, coming after them with darkness. But then there's other Jews. Instead of looking back and seeing Parai chasing them, they are looking forward, and they're looking towards that hilltop. They're looking towards that mountain. The mountain might be covered in clouds. There might be fog. There might still be like a little bit, but somewhere they can see already the tip of the mountain of Har Sinai. And they're walking towards Har Sinai. To them, there is no Parai. To them, there is no armies. There is no darkness, because all of their focus is When you go out of Mitzrayim, you will serve God on this holy mountain. And they see, and if Paro is running, it's not like they're numb. If Paro is chasing after them, they are so sure and they are so confident that the whole chasing of Paro is just for the fact to make the Geula so much greater and to decimate. They don't know how. No one knows how. We don't have the answers how it's going to happen. But we don't. What we do know for sure is that right now we're not chas v'sholem going back into exile. Geula started already. This that's happening, okay. But if my focus is on the mountain, if I'm not turning back and being intimidated by the chasing arrows, you see, as we end the Golus and we move into the Geula, I'm going to use a strong word. The satanic forces of evil shoot arrows our way. They're shooting from behind us. And these arrows explode, bombs explode, elements happen. It can be very intimidating. It's very possible for all of us to lose our sight and lose our vision. But I really do believe, without any shadow of a doubt, that if we put our minds only on the mountain, and only on the future, and only on Eretz Yisrael, and only on the Geula, and we can lift ourselves up from the space of darkness, of feeling heavy, feeling, yes, we're close to Mashiach, but we're just the last moments of darkness. We have to be strong. We're going through the last darkness. I don't think that's where it's at. I think it's much deeper than that. Let's take a look a little deeper and see the darkness itself for the beginning of the Geula. And let me share that, possible thoughts, just a few little thoughts, to help perhaps change our vision and see, instead of darkness, see light. You know, the entire world is looking at this past year as the year, I think most of the world is looking back at 2020. The world is looking at this year as a cursed year, as the year of indescribable difficulties and hardship for the human race. That's how most people are looking at 2020. People were very happy to kiss 2020 goodbye and hopefully to welcome in 2021. And people are a little cautious because you don't know what 2021 is bringing. Now, first of all, I do want to make a little observation. Is there significance to the numbers of a secular year? Should we pay attention at all? I can talk a lot of Torah about the year Tafshin Pei and the year Tafshin Pei Aleph. I've been speaking about this, about the enormity of these years, of what it means, way before Corona happened and way before all this cuckoo-ness took effect. I was telling everybody, the Pays are coming, everything is going to change. Pei is number 8, it's 80. 8 is beyond limitation. It's the year of miracles. Put on your seatbelts. I'm not telling you this to tell you. You can listen to my shiurim from a year and a half ago. I was telling people something is going to happen. I don't know what, but the world is going bonkers. Pay is incredible, but I'd rather talk about the secular year 2020 because, you know, when we can see godliness even in the mundane elements of life and see that even what seems to be just totally, even not Jewish, is also purely Elokus, purely divine, purely Eberster, I think it impacts us in a much stronger way. I'm just going to say a little mucker, because I think it sounds a little funny when you give a Kabbalistic interpretation to a year on the Gregorian calendar. But I'm going to use this as a mucker, that's possible to do something like this. There is a sefer called Oyev Yisrael. The Oyev Yisrael is known as the Holy Apter Rav. He was the third generation Rebbe, colleague, same time of the Alter Rebbe. Rav Shneur Zalman of Liadi writes him a very strong letter where Avram Shia Heschel of Apt was kind of, you know, he was a good friend of the Alter Rebbe, and then there was a lot of tension then amongst the Hasidic Rabbeim, and the Alter Rebbe did not want that the Apter Rav should take a side against him. Well, it's a long history, and I'm not going. It's a very interesting letter where he says we're such deep friends and we love each other so much from the past. Like, I don't want there should be chas v'sholom, a rift between me and you. It's a very interesting letter. But the Apter Rav is a giant, a ginormous of giants, a tzaddik. It's incredible. If you read about his life, he's just an extraordinary person. He has in a sefer, Sefer Oyev Yisrael, he talks about the month of Iyar. Okay. We all know Nisan Iyar. The month of Iyar, we know it's a known fact that the month of Iyar is a month mesugal for refuah. The pasuk says, and it's hinted to in the Rosh Tevis, Ani Hashem Reife'echa. That is Rosh Tevis. It's the acronym of the word Iyar. Iyar means I am God, your healer. So the Apter says an interesting thing. He says healing, all healing Kabbalistically, is associated with the attribute of Bina. There are 10 attributes. Bina is the source of healing. That's why I think the 8th blessing in Shemona Esrei is Rifa'enu, because healing comes from Bina, and Bina is the 8th bracha, is the 8th sphira. You start from the bottom up. Malchus, you have 7 spheros, and Bina is number 8. So here's an interesting thing. He says that if you take a look at the Iyar, is always, which month is it in the secular count? It's the month of May. Funny. He says it's the month of May. Iyar usually comes out spring, close to the beginning of the summer, the month of May. He says May is Mem Yud. If you spell it in Hebrew, May is Mem Yud. Mem Yud is 50. Mem and a Yud is 50. So he says that's indicative of Bina, because in Bina we know is the level of 50. Chamishim Sharei Bina is 50. So healing comes in the month of Iyar. What does that mean? Does that mean that May is the source of the healing? No, the source of the healing is that it's Chodesh Iyar. And there's 50 gates of Bina. But because that's the truth, that's the underlying character of that time, it expresses itself even in the Gentile world. When they name the month, unbeknown to them, they call it with the name Mem Yud, May, because that's the truth. That means really everything in the world, even the things the least expected, are nonstop giving us godly messages. Everything is the Eibishter talking to us. Even when you see an advertisement, even you see a license plate. I had a crazy story that I came across, graffiti. I might get to it. I don't know if we have time, but it's a crazy story. I was giving a video and talking about a certain truth, and someone was filming me, a deep Kabbalistic concept, and someone was filming me, and it was on a park bench somewhere, and there was graffiti on the bench. And the graffiti was mamish the point that I was giving out. It was so crazy because there's nothing in the world that's not the Eibishter, nothing that's not godly. I think we can take a look at this, the year 2020, which for most people is the most cursed year, and let's analyze it from a Kabbalistic, mystical perspective. See, here's an amazing thing. When we talk about darkness, and we say this past year was a very dark year, I think everybody on the planet will agree that this past year was a very dark year. But Hasidic, the Kabbalists tell us that there's 2 types of darkness. There's one level of darkness because there is an absence of light. There is no light, so it's dark. And then there's a different type of darkness, not because of an absence of light, but because of too much light. For example, if you're sitting in a dark room, really pitch black room, and suddenly they turn on the lights, or even more than that, a powerful, powerful projector, just is put into your face, and you look, if you're camping out in the forest, and suddenly someone shines a flashlight, a real intense flashlight right at your face, you're blinded. You're experiencing darkness, but that's not because it's really dark. It's because your eyes cannot adapt yet to the intensity of the light, and that's why it's experienced as darkness. And that darkness exists as intense kedusha. Intense godliness, very intense, is called darkness. So we can kind of look at all of existence in 3 levels. At the very lower ends of creation, there is darkness because of tzimtzum, because Hashem takes himself away. In the lowest realms of existence, there is an absence of Hashem. There's golus, there's darkness, there's what we say in davening, Vanoichi astir astir panai. Hashem says, I will hide my face on that day. I'm concealed. I'm kind of pretending I'm not there. I'm hiding from you. That's an absence of light. Then there is light. Baruch Hashem, good times when we can see Hashem and we can see a lot of bracha, and Yidden are making a lot of parnasa, and we're building yeshivas, and we're learning Torah, and we're spreading Yiddishkeit, and we're having it good begashmias or beruchnias with all the good zachen, with all the good stuff. That's light. And obviously then we feel that Hashem is really blessing the Jewish people and blessing the world. But then there is a much deeper and higher level. And that is when Hashem is downloading something so deep and such powerful presence of himself, so deep, but Hashem doesn't filter it. It's his unfiltered self, not diminished, not limited, as he truly is. Because we're not ready for it, it's such blinding, intense light, so it manifests as darkness to all of us. No one, it feels like a blackout. But the truth is, it's the deepest light. So the question now is regarding 2020. What is the year 2020? Is it a moment of Hester Panim? Vanoichi Astir Astir Panai? Hashem Chas v'Sholem is throwing us back into the dungeons of darkness for a moment? Yes, to finish the Golos and so on and so on. Or perhaps is it the revelation of Mashiach Mamish already here in the world? So let me try to give you my evidence. And I let you afterwards decide for yourself if what I'm saying makes sense, based on the evidence. And what I'd like to say is as follows. In Chassidus it says, hear this idea, that all light that there is coming to the world, all godly bracha, all godliness comes from 10 spheres, the 10 attributes, a system of 10 attributes. Those 10 attributes are channels of light. But then there is a level that's beyond all the attributes. I mentioned it in the beginning, the level called paroi. The level called, it's higher than the attributes. It's unfiltered, undiminished light. It's the infinite light of God as it is without any limitations. That's called keser. That's called crown. And here's the amazing idea. The level of the crown is referred to in Kabbalah, in Chassidus, and in Psukim. It's referred to as darkness. And I'll give you the pasuk that says, Yoshes Choshech Sisroi. Hashem shrouds himself in darkness. That means if Hashem removes all the filters and he reveals himself as he is, it's way too dark for us. We can't handle it. So we go dark. Okay, so now we established point number one. The level of Keser, which is Hashem's unfiltered, unmasked, unlimited self, is called darkness. Now let's take it a step deeper. Which letter of the Aleph Beis symbolizes Keser? The Aleph Beis has deep mystical, Kabbalistic, and hidden meaning. Which level of which letter of the Aleph Beis symbolizes the level of Keser? The letter the most associated with Keser. There's other letters as well, but the letter the most associated with Keser is the letter Chaf. The letter Chaf. First of all, the word Keser starts with a Chaf. Right? Keser is spelled Keser, which means crown, starts with a Chaf. Chaf, Taf, Reish, Keser. Okay. Secondly, let's look at the gematria of the word Keser. Keser is gematria. Taf, Reish, Taf is 400. Every Hebrew alphabet has a number. Taf is 400, Reish is 200. 400 and 200 is 600. Chaf is 20. So how much is the gematria of Keser? 620. Now bear with me. Let's look at the word Chaf. Chaf is the number that we use as a symbol for 20. Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, Gimel is 3, Yud is 10, Chaf is 20. Which word in the Torah, in Hebrew, is the word for 20? So we know Esrim, Eser is 10, Esrim is 20. The numeric value of the word Esrim, if you count the word Esrim, do the gematria of the word Esrim, Reish, Ayin, Shin, Reish, Yud, Mem, I'm not going to do it. Esrim is gematria 620. Esrim is gematria 620. So that's an indication that Chaf, which is 20, relates to Keser. Now, all right? So following what I'm saying the letter Chaf is associated with this very supernal level called darkness. Now let's take one more very important idea. How many mitzvahs do the Jewish people have? How many mitzvahs? We have 613 commandments, but we also have 7 rabbinic commandments. So when we take the 613 biblical commandments, and then we attach to them the 7, the Rabbanan commandments, how many commandments do we have? We have 620. Why? Because what's the point of all of Torah? What's the point? I just want to seal off with this powerful idea. What's the point of all of our Torah mitzvahs that we've been doing from the day we started? We were at Har Sinai, we received the Torah. Until today, what are we doing? What have we been doing? We're all downloading Hashem's crown. What's Mashiach? Mashiach is Hashem is going to reveal himself in this world, and Hashem won't be blocked anymore. His infinite light is going to be revealed in the world. So we have been downloading Keser 620 from Matan Torah until now. We're downloading Keser. Now here's an amazing thing. If you look in your Aleph base, how many chafs are there? Is there one chaf? There's 2 chafs. There's a regular chaf and there's a long chaf. Double chaf. It's explained in Chassidus that there's 2 levels of Keser. The outside of God's crown, and called Erech Anpin, and the inside of Hashem's crown, called Atik Yom, the Ancient of Days, the revelation of Mashiach. When we learn Torah and we do mitzvahs, which level of the crown are we downloading? Both levels of the crown. Double chaf, double keser. Now here's an amazing thing. When did we start downloading Torah and mitzvahs? Who was the first person who started keeping mitzvahs? Who was the first person at the beginning of time? Avram Avinu. And when Avram Avinu started keeping Torah and mitzvahs, what was the first word God said to Avram Avinu? Lech lecha, 2 chafs. And the Medrash says that with those 2 chafs, the Eibishter liberated Avram Avinu. 2020. So I believe that in this past year, this could be, we completed the download of the 2 levels of Keser in the year 2020. What happened in the year 2020? It became extremely dark. But what was the darkness? The darkness was this mysterious disease, this mysterious virus called Corona. Why is it called Corona? Because the virus has spikes like a crown. So you can get caught up in the virus and be afraid of the virus, or you can get caught up and realize, is there a deeper message? Is the Eibishter downloading something so spectacular into the world? His crown, it's too bright, it's too intense, so it's Corona, it's causing darkness. And I'm going to conclude with one last thought. What happened as a result of the Corona? I mentioned earlier, the human face was changed. A cover came on our faces. Who was the first person who touched the Eibishter's crown? Who brought us the Torah? Who brought us the Torah? Think about it. Who was the one who brought the Torah mitzvahs to the world? Moshe Rabbi. When he went to get the Luchos. And on the Luchos was carved out the Aseres HaDibros, 10 commandments. Rabbeinu Sadia Goin says there are 620 words in the Aseres HaDibros. 620 words, Gematria Keser. What happened to Moshe Rabbeinu as soon as he got the Luchos? What happened to him? The Pasuk says Moshe Rabbeinu's face became so bright that it was too bright. No one can look at Moshe Rabbeinu. What did Moshe Rabbeinu do? He put on his face masver. He put on his face a mask because the world can't handle Moshe Rabbeinu's light. And what is the words the Torah uses to tell us about that powerful light that was coming from his face? Ki karan oir. His face was karan oir, was radiating light. Do you see the word corona? Karan oir, light, powerful lights of keser, intense light. But it's too bright, so Moshe covers it with a mask. The first person who got corona is Moshe Rabbeinu, but then only he had it. Now it's coming around and spreading over the whole world. I know that, yes, it's a virus and it's darkness, but we have to look with Mashiach the Ga'oigim. We have to look with Geula eyes. It can't be that this is just darkness. It can't be that this is just a plague. The whole world's face didn't change just like this. You know why our faces changed? Because every human face is now radiating Hashem's infinite light. Because we're attaching Hashem to the world. We have to, that's why there is a cover. Hopefully very soon we'll be able to remove the masks because the world will be ready to receive the real corona, the real crowning of Hashem. 2020, an unbelievable year of such light, of such bracha, although, albeit right now, it's still confusing. And that's why, what is the saying that people say? 2020, hindsight. That means that 2020, we don't know what it is until we turn around afterwards and we look back. We open up, we click open on that download and we start understanding what happened. Yidden, we have to know that we are standing now at the moments of the redemption. There is unbelievable light. We chas v'sholem can't become broken. We chas v'sholem can't become depressed. We have to recognize that the very things we think are dark are really the pneumius, unbelievable light. Now we have to use our emunah to this. Not always do we have the eyes to see that. But be'emes, that's the truth. It's truth about Black Lives Matter. It's truth about defunding the police. It's truth about the masks. It's truth about the isolation. It's truth about all these things are all connected to such unbelievable light, but not necessarily we're all seeing it. May the Eibishter help that we should be able, even though Paroi is still chasing after us, instead of facing Paroi and being terrorized, let's turn around and face Har Sinai and face the future and know that we are living in the Kates Hayomin, not only Chas v'Sholem in the Kates Hayomin. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said about this generation, we are the last generation of exile, but we are also the first generation of the Geula. It's in each and every one of our choice to make up, to decide if we are living as the last generation of Golos, or if we are members of the first generation of the Geula. It takes a little work to be able to live in positivity, to be able to live in the first generation of Geula. But we have the koyach, we have the ability to do that. And may we all have the schus to already open. That 2021 should be already completely different. And by the way, just to finish, when you take a look at the word chaf, a kaf, two kafs, which are 2020, the other letter in a kaf, in the hidden, every letter has a hidden letter. Kaf is kaf pei. Chaf, kaf pei. That means that parallel to 2020 is pei, tafshin pei aleph, which pei is also keser. So it's clear that what's happening in the world now is not chas v'sholem, an absence of Hashem, but a powerful presence of the Eibishter. All of us have such kedusha now. We have such holiness. We have such power. We just have to believe in it. We have to believe in the Eibishter. We have to believe in what the Rebbe told us, that Higiaz Mangu Laschem, the time of redemption has arrived. We have to be besimcha. We should sing. We should dance. We should strengthen our families, even if it's hard. But for sure, any second, the lights will turn on. We will all understand that we have been living through the most awesome time to ever be alive. L'chaim u'lebracha Yidden. And let's dance with Mashiach Tzidkenu now.
Thank you very much. Wow. That's all I can say. Rabbi Wolf, that is an unbelievable presentation. I noticed that the chats, there was absolutely nothing on the chats. I think everybody was so captivated and so hypnotized by your passion, by your enthusiasm. Okay, so, but you know, we are still on for at least a few more minutes. If anybody,
I'm here. If anybody has a question,
if anybody has a question, perhaps you could, you know, type out. If you have a question, I think that's probably the best thing to do. Rabbi Wolf, you can see obviously the you can check anybody who
I'm seeing what comes up on the thing. I'm not getting the full chat. I'm getting
Okay, so
something.
let me see if I can see.
Yeah, I see someone has Hillel Bilsovsky has a question. I just didn't see the question.
You can't see the question.
My question is.
I just saw that he says one question.
A very brief one.
Oh, I see.
Obviously, what you're saying is in line with everything the Rebbe is saying, and so on. And gematriyos are amazing, etc. But there's a clear difference between Parshas Bo and Beshalach at the present moment. Now is more the time. The Rebbe referred at this time, at this present time, at the same time when the Gula is here already. V'adayin leiba, and there was still the beginning of other Rishon, so on. The darkness of Golos is just before the Makas Becheres. It seems we're not yet at the after the at Chatzas.
For sure, we can look at it that way, as in that state. We can also see that for those. I believe that in Nun Aleph, where the Rebbe said Shana Shemelech HaMashiach Nigla Boi, and the year that Mashiach is revealing himself, and Mashiach is already doing activities in the world, that was the first blast of Geula in the world. We see communism coming down. We see major world changes. We saw unbelievable things. Let me share with you. Being that's my birthday. Being that's my birthday, I want to. I started saying a new kapitel. I turned 49 today, and I started saying kapitel nun. I'm actually still in the middle of my davening today, and I didn't get to say yet my kapitel nun. I'm holding by enkel. I had to speak for the cheder today, and so on and so forth. I got a little bit thrown off, and I'm speaking to you. I didn't get to say yet my new kapitel for the first time, but I'm excited to be saying it soon. I like it better than Mem Tes, because Mem Tes is the kapitel you say in a mourner's house. So I'm very happy that I'm done with Mem Tes, and I'm going into Nun, Shkoyach. But yesterday in the morning, I had this chus that my einakel woke me up. They just moved in from the. I had a new einakel, Baruch Hashem, and we had a bris 2 weeks ago, and they came and they moved into my house. My granddaughter woke me up early, so I was up early, and I got a chance to go through my entire kapitel. Kapitel Nun begins with the words, I think maskela asav, mizmar liasav, Keil Elokim Hashem. Keil Elokim, and then Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. 3 names of Hashem. And it's a very strange, because you have all the names of Hashem lined up. So I'm not, in the Yahal Or of the Tzemach Tzedek, and I love learning the Tzemach Tzedek's, he's very into all this giving you all the Kabbalistic meaning and all that. But it's even if you look at Marcus's Tehillim, done a beautiful job, Rabbi Marcus, when they put out this big Tehillim with Hasidic interpretation. So he brings it, and then I got a chance to go into it over there and learn it from the Makar. Over there, it's explained that there are 3 spheres in which the Eibishter reveals himself, always 3 spheres. The Seder of all godliness is as follows. First, Kael is Chesed. First is revelation, which means complete revelation, unhindered revelation. Then after that comes Vayi Erev, Vayi Boiker, comes Choshech. Sorry. First there is light, that's what he says. First is initial light. Then comes Choshech, which is Erev, and that's the name of Elokim. Elokim is darkness, Tzimtzum. And then after the Tzimtzum comes Havaya. What's Havaya? Havaya is that even though it's dark, you blast through the darkness with emes. Oz yibaka, that's called, it's you break, the darkness is there. It's not like there's no darkness, but even in the darkness, you bring through the light, and that's the idea of the Avram is chesed, Yitzchak is gerura, Yaakov is yibaka. There is darkness, but notwithstanding the darkness, the light overcomes the darkness and beats it, and then you have Tiferes, which is the ultimate glory. That's the Seder of every Gilui. So I think, to me, it's very clear that in Nun Aleph and in Nun Beis, especially those 2 years from Nun Aleph, and there was Gilui of Mashiach in the most spectacular way. It was Kael, revelation. Then came a strong period of Elokim, of Tzimtzum, of blockage, of it. And we're holding right now at the time of Yibaka. In other words, notwithstanding the darkness, notwithstanding the pain, notwithstanding the heavy doubts that Lubavitch and we have all gone through, and the suffering and the questioning, this is all legitimate because Shem Elokim is very powerful, and it confronts the light, and it blocks the light, and we've seen intense things. If you take a look, Yisrael Mashiach was so strong in the Rebbe's days in the world, in terms of things happening that were so good, and then the Rebbe himself mentions that because the Geula is about to happen, the koiches of the other side are going to fight back. And the Rebbe then said it regarding that they're beginning to question Yerushalayim. They have the chutzpah, the Rebbe says, that they're demanding Yerushalayim. The Rebbe says, it's for sure never going to happen. Loma rakshu goyim, Yosef Hashemayim yitzchak. The Eibishter lacht zechoyis. The Eibishter is laughing from it. But what do we see? We had a 25-year period of a lot of extreme. Eretz Yisrael was under enormous pressure, intifadas. Almost like everything that Rebbe said seemed to be the opposite. But suddenly, a few years ago, we started seeing again Mashiach rolling into the world. And I think the biggest miracle is not that we started seeing Mashiach stam in the world. I think the bigger miracle is that take a look how much Lubavitch today. I'm not saying he's comfortable with Mashiach much more than we were 10 years ago, 5 years ago. People are getting more, in other words, the Rebbe's sichos are becoming, again, reignited in us. We're turning our attention to that. We're saying, what did he really say in an aleph and in a base? It's beginning, in other words, there was this revelation, concealment, and now a return back. Can we hear it now despite the darkness? Can we go back to those sichos? And I think the more we tune ourselves into those sichos and to those talks and to that incredible Mashiach energy, which is the energy of the Geula, it actually manifests in the world. So, yes, I'm going to be masking that this darkness that we're going through right now, I didn't expect it, especially this. I mean, I think none of us expected that things would go suddenly take such a dive, but Mirzan Chassidim, and we have a Rebbe, and we have an Eibishter, and we have promises. So we have to, I think now we just have to go with unshakable emunah. That's for sure, without a question. The Kalipa is going to fall, and it's never going to get up again. And because of that, it's terrorizing the world right now. It will definitely, b'li shum safek, it will collapse. So the Eibishter help, and it should just be b'chesed u'beracham. That's what we're all davening for. And I believe the courage that we have to talk about Mashiach and to talk about strong, I think that's what is needed now. That we as Lubavitch, all of us, talk to the entire world about Mashiach, about the Geula. The world is so ready. Everybody so wants to hear it. I noticed that in all my shiurim, if I'm giving a shiur with deep chassidus, talking about anything, I get a few hundred, maybe people, sitting up. But when I talk about Mashiach and things, I get thousands of listeners. Everybody wants to hear Mashiach. Everybody wants to hear Geula. Every type of Jew. The world wants to hear. Goyim want to hear Mashiach. Everybody knows there's something going on. Everybody's looking for that message of light and that message of truth. We have it. We just have to share it.
Okay,
Wow.
Thank you very much. Is there any other, do we have any other questions before we?
Hi, yeah, there's another question in the chat now from Yisrael Goldstein.
What is the question, please? Can you read it out? Hello?
Yes,
Rabbi,
1 second. Yeah.
I don't see the question.
So Rabbi Goldstein, Yisrael Goldstein said, he asked that he felt that the subject of Mashiach has often been a little bit taboo, meaning people wouldn't want to speak about it. And he said, what can we do to maybe improve the situation now, to try to make Mashiach a subject that is more accessible and less scary?
I see only one answer. And the answer is that in the Rebbe's talks, from Memches, I would say, Memches, Memtes, Nun, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis, the Rebbe's talks are like off the charts Mashiach. And the energy flow is so intense. And if we have a constant diet, we have a constant. I think to limit it only to Nun Aleph and Nun Beis, I think is a little too much. I think, again, I'm not saying that we don't learn all of Chassidus. I spend hours every week teaching Likutei Torah and Toras Chaim and Biyurei HaZohar. It's all one truth. It's one emes. It's one. But In those sikhs, the Rebbe gave us the ammunition for this last moments of darkness, and he gave us the ideas. He gave us the whole subject, if you could say. When you learn it, you become so excited about it. The way you say it is not. The way you say it is because you spilled the beans because you can't contain it. And only when you say it in a way when you're excited and you can't contain it, and it like comes bursting out of you from everything you're saying, you see it, you're excited, and that's infectious. That's neshama. That's when it goes over. I think, we sit there and we use our moichin and we calculate how are we going to say, how are we going to teach. I don't think there's one message. The message is Mahalta Mashiach Yid. Take a look, the world is all Geuladig. And when do you see that? When do you feel that? When you learn and you digest these powerful talks, the Rebbe puts Mashiach into your bones. He puts it into your thing. So, B'derech Memela, you speak about it, you share it. How you share, what you say, obviously you're a bardas. You know the person you're talking to. The Keli, what is he Keli for? Is he a Keli for the whole 9 yards? Is he not a Keli? So you don't have to say the whole 9 yards, but you're giving over like the kochzech. He sees that your entire life and your entire energy is Geula and Mashiach. That's where I think we need to go. We all have to increase our learning. That's where it is. I know it's a little derech harucha, but that's the Chabad way. The Chabad way is not stam chitzonius. It's not slogans. It's not just things. It's pnimius. But the pnimius is we have to be mishagoyim, but we have to be learners mishagoyim. The Rebbe said just the kedusha. Let me put it this way: not every mishuganer became mishuga because of Basi Lagani. You can say this person went on mishuganer without Basi Lagani. The Rebbe is not saying the Rebbe didn't go to a crazy to an asylum place and say I'm looking for mishagoyim. Come join me. The Rebbe went to Chabad Chasidim. The Rebbe said, I'm going to turn you on so deeply. Your excitement has to be so atzmiistic, so etzem hanefish, you can't control yourself, like the Tana dancing by the chasana. He's a chasan kala. He feels this energy. He starts doing weird stuff. He's not talking like a Meshuggah, but you realize there's a deep, intense, powerful spiritual light that's emanating from his neshama. He's not just there saying slogans. And that's what I think it is. I think if we all tune in a deep way, in a real organic way, into the sichos and we learn b'chavrusas, and we learn. They did the sichos project. It's so beautiful. It's so amazing. We need to do the same thing, but to do it with Sefer HaSichos. Mamish, that's that. Because that's where the Rebbe is rolling Geula. And that's where I think, I mentioned earlier that Rebbe says that our generation is the last generation of Golus and the first generation of Geula. In a different sichos, the Rebbe connects it to Yud Shvat, because Yud, the Rebbe says, is the number of completion of Golus, and 11 is the number of the beginning of Geula. So Yud Shvat is a combination of 10 and 11. It's the combination of Golus, culmination of exile, and the beginning of Geula, Yud Shvat, because it's the 10th day in the 11th month. So it's interesting how the Rebbe's Nesios has two parts to it. The Rebbe's one thing is we finished, we pitched the kneplach, the Rebbe says. We polished the buttons, the last things of Golus. But at the same time, afterwards, we turn around and we say we're the Dor Rishon Shel Geula. We become the generation of the Geula. I think in the Rebbe's Nesius itself, I'm not me thinking, the Rebbe says it himself, that after the Rebbetzin passed away, so the Rebbe, till then, I feel like till Tafshem Memches, the previous Rebbe, who's number 10, is the CEO of Wabash. From Tafshem Memches, where the Rebbetzin passed away, and the Gashmi is the link, the Rebbe kind of turns and starts marching number 11, like without a, Dor Rishon Shel Geula suddenly starts becoming so much stronger in the Rebbe's sichos. And that's why you can find a lot of Chassidim that felt intimidated by those sichos. Like from Tafshem Memches, they couldn't, to catch up with the Rebbe was a little daunting. Like, where's the Rebbe going? What's he saying? It didn't make sense to us because obviously we understand he's a giant of giants. He's looking with binoculars in which he can see everything that's going to happen, or without, his eyes are the binoculars. We are tiny little shmendriks, looking from below. What are our estimations of what's going on are nowhere, nothing compared to what he sees. So when he's telling us, Chevra, it's enough fixing the world. We just have to now start introducing Geula. Now is the time. It could have been, it could have been, and it was, and it still is confusing. And the only way to get over that is to have the courage to learn those sichos. When I say learn them, not necessarily short little, slogans. Clipping the wild, what do you call oides the toyo. It's not clipping. It's learning week after week, whether it's memches, memtes, nun, aleph, learning them, ingesting them, understanding them, and automatically you will see you will become crazy. But a good crazy, the crazy that Rebbe wants us to be, like the same craziness that Rebbe says. That Rebbe said, I'm crazy about Mashiach. And when we become crazy, we have shtus to kedusha, we will end all the darkness. We will be able to share this with everybody. We will be able to teach it to everybody. That's the way to go. If everybody can move a little bit more into that zone, I think that's what we need. The Eibishter wart nicht for Kasach. Hashem is not waiting for a lot. Hashem is waiting right now. Can I finish with a very interesting? They put out this exciting video that they're calling for Yidden to daven for Mashiach at the same moment. It's unbelievable. It's so beautiful to see. It's not Lubavitch. It's being done, and it's a very beautiful video calling. And a lot of Lubavitchers, and I know you're Yisrael, you've asked the same question, like why wait till Adar? Why not do it now? So it's a good question, and we all agree it should be behind. But on the other hand, the fact that you create momentum and excitement, that you want to get everybody, we got to work a little bit with and say that there's talshalos. You got to work. But I thought of a very interesting thing. The pasuk says, "Terem yikra v'aniya ene." Before you will cry out, I will answer. So what does that mean? Terem yikra v'aniya ene. If the Eibishter answers us before we even cried out, then no one is going to cry out. What do you mean? Before you cried out, if we got the Yeshua before, then we're not going to cry out. And if we're going to say that's what it means, Hashem is going to answer us, so we're not going to have to cry out. Then what does it mean? I'm going to answer. Answer means I'm answering you. You petition, then I'm answering. So it has to be a response to our request. But if it comes before we cry out, we're not going to cry out. So it's a stira, it's a contradiction. How can you cry out and how can he answer to our cries, but he answered before we cried? Then there's no need to cry. So I think the Eibishter is waiting for this moment. I think it's referring to right now. We're planning to cry out. We're advertising. We're reaching. We're sending out WhatsApps. We on Lubavitch should join this campaign. And we should be the front of it. All the Yidden should cry out together for Mashiach. What nachas this gives? Nachas gives it. This is the emergency. This is it. Man, Yidden darf schreien. There has to be this vayitzaku, this admosai, global admosai. But the Eibishter doesn't. We don't have to wait till Adar. We're an emergency. This week is an emergency. Before your Shvat is the emergency. Before January 20th is actually my English birthday, January 20th. It's the emergency now. So that Eibishter help them, that the mere commitment that we commit ourselves to get to be Yikra is Aniya Anna. The Eibishter should help them find them. So no one will mind if that moment of Av Masai that we all planned and we worked all so hard for never comes, because instead of Av Masai, we're all going to raise the banner of Dida Natzach that we won already, and we're dancing with Melech HaMashiach. So the Eibishter help them. We should. I don't know. Hear what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would. I think I want to leave it there simply because that is on a great high. Okay, where everybody who's been on this.
What's going on?
Everybody who has been screaming on this. I mean, who's been listening to this wonderful, beautiful presentation by Rabbi Wolf, can feel the passion, can feel the excitement, and can almost feel that idea of Mashiach in the sense that this is what the Rebbe wanted, that to talk about the topic, to learn about the topic, and to feel that this is really what it's all about. You've done a great service to us by feeling, and we've had some fantastic comments over here, just seeing just the excitement that you have made here. We want to wish you all a happy birthday. You should go continue spreading your beautiful insights, the beautiful personal insights that you have that are so inspirational, because you feel it and it comes across, you believe it and it comes across to us. We wish you, Mamish, a beautiful Shnas Hatzlacha. It's the Parshas HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. It's the first mitzvah. Achodesh is Elohim. You know, it says Hachidush is Elohim. Absolutely. The Chidush. How did you know? You got the same. You got the same word. I thought it does that you brought a great Chidush to ideas that we've all been going through, and perhaps like to see a beautiful positive insight in them, and a beautiful positive to say, you know, make some kind of sense of this Mishigas that's been going on the last year. Has been a real pleasure to hear you.
For those who want, let me just, people ask, my website is Mayon, M-A-A-Y-O-N, MAAYON.com. Also in YouTube, I have a channel, so you can put in Reuven Wolf or Mayon Yisrael. Or if the rabbi, I'll share with the rabbi in a second after I go off. I'll have to go out. I'll share with the rabbi.
And we can send to all the participants.
So you can send a number in which you can receive daily inspirational videos. I don't do them every day, short videos, mainly, you know, to keep our head in a good headspace. So I'm going to send you a number in which you can, you know what, let me do it right now. Let me actually say the number. I think it's better if I send it so people can copy it.
Yeah, send it.
So I'll send it to you, to your number that we were WhatsApping to, and you can post it onto the Zoom.
Absolutely. No problem. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank Esther Mindel. Esther Mindel, my wife, who really, it was her idea to bring you on here and have this fantastic presentation. So we want to thank her because that was really her baby, as it were. And we're really all very grateful for this fantastic presentation. Just,
only brachas and only good news. Baruch Hashem, yeah. Only good things. Okay, Yasha Koyach. Be well.
Thank you very much for. I just want to ask everybody, just do we have a couple of events coming up? We have we have a Tu B'Shvat event. Look, please, at your. We will be sending information about that, and also the JLI course with Rabbi Dovikat starting a week from Wednesday. This is a show.
1 second, let me give you the number here. Well, basically, I'm going to give you a link in which people can just push that link and they will automatically subscribe to that WhatsApp. So I'm giving it to you now, and I'm going to send it right over here. Here's your number. I'm putting the link on here, and if you can just grab it and put it on the, I just sent it to you. So the number
you sent it on my WhatsApp?
I sent it to your WhatsApp. It's a link. The number that ends with 7065, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not sure exactly how I get that onto this. I'm not sure really exactly what I do. I've copied the link. I can forward it to.
Why not type it in the chat?